A billionaire in a terminal condition asked a homeless woman to pretend to be his wife during a luxury party. Hours later, the billionaire passed away, and what the homeless woman did left everyone in panic. The sun mercilessly punished the streets of Houston on that suffocating summer afternoon. Emily pushed her cardboard cart through the alleys of the historic center, the rusty wheels protesting at every irregularity in the asphalt. Her dark brown eyes, though tired, remained alert as she approached the commercial area. 3 days without being able to collect enough money to eat had left her hands trembling and her vision slightly blurred. "I can't faint now. I need to hold on a little longer. I've seen many people die of hunger on these streets. I won't be another one. God kept me alive until now, not for me to give up," she murmured, leaning on the cart to catch her breath. A burly shopkeeper rushed out of his store when he saw Emily approaching the stacked empty boxes on the sidewalk. His face was red with anger, and he brandished a broom like a weapon. Other shopkeepers watched the scene with a mixture of disdain and morbid amusement. "Get out of here, you worthless bum. I've told you I don't want any beggars near my establishment. You scare away my customers, bring dirt to the streets. Go scavenge somewhere else," he shouted, hitting Emily's cart with such force that several already collected boxes fell to the ground. Emily tried to quickly recover her precious cargo, but the shopkeeper kept advancing, now throwing dirty water from cleaning the store in her direction. Her already tattered clothes got soaked, and the cardboard she had managed to collect was ruined. Silent tears streamed down her face as she walked away, pushing her now lighter cart. "Why do they treat us like this? We're not trash. We're human beings trying to survive. If they knew how it hurts to sleep hungry, how humiliating it is to be treated like you're invisible," she thought, her stomach loudly protesting. The smell of food coming from a restaurant made her stomach churn painfully. Emily knew that in the back of the establishment, close to closing time, the employees discarded the day's leftovers. Hidden in the shadows of an alley, she patiently waited, watching the movement through half-closed eyes from weakness. "I just need a little food, anything to trick the hunger. I can't take chewing on paper anymore to pretend I'm eating something," she whispered to herself, her hands clutching her empty stomach. When an employee finally appeared with trash bags, Emily cautiously approached. However, before she could reach the food scraps, the back door opened again. An elegantly dressed woman, probably the restaurant's owner, saw her and started shouting, "Security! There's a beggar trying to steal our food. Call the police. These bums are getting bolder. We need to clean the streets of these people," her shrill voice attracting the attention of other shopkeepers. Emily ran back to her cart, her weak legs nearly giving way under her weight. The sun was still relentless, and her vision was starting to darken at the edges. Leaning against a wall, she took a deep breath, trying to control the dizziness. "I can't let them take me to jail. In prison, I wouldn't even have the leftovers to eat. I need to be smarter, find another place," she thought, gathering her last strength to continue her search. That's when something caught her attention in a nearby trash can. An imported medicine box, the kind that costs a fortune at pharmacies. It was empty, but Emily knew some smaller pharmacies bought the packaging to resell the cheaper medications. With trembling hands, she tucked the box into her cart. "Maybe I can get a few dollars for this. It's not much, but it might be enough to buy a loaf of bread. I just need to hold on a little longer," she murmured, a small flame of hope igniting in her chest. As the sun began to set, Emily noticed something strange. A sleek black limousine, so shiny it seemed to absorb the fading light, had passed her 3 times in the last few minutes. Her heart began to beat faster, fear replacing hunger. Terrible stories circulated among the homeless, people who disappeared, organ traffickers, illegal medical experiments. My God, they're following me. Why would a limousine be interested in a beggar? "I need to get out of here before it's too late," she thought, panic giving her a strength she didn't know she still possessed. When the limousine made the turn for the 4th time, now slowing down as it approached her, Emily abandoned her cart and started running. Her bare feet pounded painfully against the hot asphalt, her heart threatening to burst in her chest. The medicine box, her only hope of getting food that day, was forgotten in the abandoned cart. "Please God, don't let them catch me. I can endure hunger, cold, and contempt, but I can't end up as another missing beggar from the streets," she prayed in thought as the limousine accelerated towards her. The sky had taken on orange hues, turning the downtown streets into a labyrinth of elongated shadows, Emily ran aimlessly, just wanting to put as much distance as possible between her and the mysterious vehicle. Her lungs burned and hunger blurred her vision, but the survival instinct kept her moving. "I'm not going to die today. I won't be another victim." "Helena, my mother, wherever you are, protect me," she whispered, unaware that her words carried more truth than she could have imagined at that moment. Emily ran through the narrow streets of the historic center, her heart beating so hard it seemed to want to escape her chest. Hunger and fatigue made each step harder than the one before, but fear was a powerful fuel. Her bare feet left stains on the asphalt, marking her path of desperate escape. The sound of the limousine still echoed behind her, the powerful engine purring like a predator chasing its prey. "I've seen so many people disappear from the streets, so many stories of beggars who vanish without a trace. I won't be another one. I can't end up like that," she thought, as she slipped through a narrow passage between two old buildings. The limousine stopped at the entrance to the alley, unable to follow through the tight space. The driver honked gently, trying to get her attention, but the sound only served to increase Emily's panic. She kept running, her lungs burning with the effort, her vision starting to darken at the edges due to hunger and fatigue. Upon exiting the other side of the alley, she found herself in a busy square, where street vendors and passers-by watched her with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Please, someone help me. They're chasing me. Please," she shouted, but people only moved away, avoiding involvement. The limousine reappeared on the other side of the square, having gone around the block. The tinted passenger window slowly rolled down, revealing the pale, concerned face of an elderly man. William tried to call out to her, his weak voice nearly lost in the noise of the city. Emily, still in a panic, continued her flight, now heading toward an old church. "Miss, please, wait, I don't want to hurt you. I need your help," he shouted, his voice carrying urgency and something else, despair, perhaps. The church stairs seemed endless for her exhausted legs, but Emily kept climbing, determined to find refuge in the sacred place. Her knees trembled, threatening to give way at any moment. The setting sun streamed through the stained glass windows, creating ghostly patterns on the stone floor. "Saint Emily, Mother of God, protect me. Don't let them harm me in this sacred house," she prayed in her mind, her words punctuated by ragged breaths. William got out of the limousine with difficulty, leaning heavily on a cane. His expensive suit couldn't hide the frailty of his body, and beads of sweat glistened on his pale forehead. The driver tried to help him, but he waved him off, determined to climb the steps on his own. "Please, listen to me. I've been watching you for days. I saw your kindness to other homeless people, even when you had nothing for yourself. I need someone like you, someone with real humanity." His voice echoed through the ancient church walls. Emily stopped at the top of the stairs, something in the man's voice finally piercing her fear. She turned slowly, watching the evident effort with which he climbed each step. Her legs trembled violently, as much from exhaustion as from the hunger that now seemed to consume her insides. "What could a rich man like you want with someone like me? Why did you chase me all over the city instead of just talking to me?" she questioned, her voice hoarse from running. William finally reached the top of the stairs, his face now a mask of pain and exhaustion. He took a thick envelope from the inner pocket of his coat, extending it towards her with trembling hands. The light of the setting sun created a golden halo around him, as if nature itself wanted to highlight the importance of that moment. "I need your help for my last act in this world. The doctors have given me only a few days to live, and before I die I need to correct a grave mistake from the past. You remind me so much of someone I lost a long time ago," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. Emily felt her resistance begin to melt in the face of the evident sincerity in the man's words. She took a hesitant step towards him, noticing for the first time the details of his face, the light brown eyes that seemed to carry an ancient sadness, the deep wrinkles that spoke of a life of regrets. "You are clearly sick, I can see that. But why me? What's so special about me that deserves your attention?" she asked, still keeping a safe distance. William tried to take another step towards her, but his legs failed him. The envelope fell from his trembling hands, scattering high-value notes across the church steps. His face turned even paler, and his breathing became shallow and irregular. "You have the same eyes as her, the same kindness, the same strength. I need to tell you the truth about..." His words were interrupted by a violent cough, and he clutched his chest, his eyes widening in panic. Emily forgot all her fear and distrust when she saw the man stumbling. She ran to support him before he fell, her own frail body barely able to bear his weight. William was now completely pale, his words coming out in painful gasps. The driver was already running up the stairs, his face a mask of concern. "Someone call an ambulance. He's having a heart attack. Please help. I can't let him die, not before knowing what he wanted to tell me." Emily shouted, holding William's increasingly inert body as the sun finished setting, plunging the city into shadows that seemed to foreshadow the longest night of her life. The public San Vicente hospital was crowded when Emily arrived with William in her arms, helped by the driver Carlos. The fluorescent lights flickered irregularly, casting ghostly shadows along the crowded hallways of people waiting for care. Dr. Ramirez immediately attended to him upon recognizing William Torres, his longtime patient, leading them to a private room. "I can't believe fate has brought me here, helping a man I was fleeing in terror just minutes ago. But something in his eyes, something about him reminds me of someone I lost long ago," Emily thought, watching the doctors work frenetically. William regained consciousness as the nurses connected the cardiac monitors and administered emergency medication. His eyes immediately sought Emily, and with trembling hands, he held hers with surprising strength for someone so debilitated. "Please don't go. I need you to understand why I chose you among so many people. I have little time left in this world, and you are my last chance to do something right, to correct past mistakes that have haunted me for decades," he implored, his voice weak but determined, making Emily stay by his side. Dr. Ramirez finished examining the results with a grave expression, adjusting his glasses several times, a nervous tic that revealed his concern. "Mr. Torres, your condition is extremely delicate. Your heart is very weak. We have 48 hours at most. Any stress could be fatal," the doctor explained, but William was already trying to sit up, his eyes fixed on Emily. "Doctor, I'm going to die anyway. At least allow me to die doing something meaningful. Take us to my mansion. I have one last act to perform, one last chance to do justice," William declared, as Emily held his hand, an inexplicable connection already formed between them. Carlos received detailed instructions from the doctor about the necessary care while helping William get up. Emily hesitated for a moment, but something greater than herself compelled her to follow that mysterious man. "Come, my dear. It's time to turn a beggar into a princess, if only for one night. There is so much I need to tell you, so many secrets that need to come to light," William murmured, a faint smile illuminating his pale face as they headed towards the waiting limousine. Dr. Ramirez watched the vehicle depart, knowing that night would change many lives forever. On the hospital sidewalk, the last ray of sun illuminated a small fallen medicine box, the same one Emily had found earlier, now forgotten like her former life on the streets. The limousine crossed the imposing gates of Torres Mansion, exactly as the last rays of sun tinted the sky golden. Emily watched awestruck, the winding stone path that meandered through meticulously tended gardens, leading to a construction that seemed more like a palace. William had fallen asleep during the journey, exhausted by the day's events, leaving her alone with her thoughts and fears. As they stopped in front of the main entrance, Virginia, the housekeeper, was already waiting at the top of the marble staircase. Her experienced eyes sized Emily up and down, not with disdain but with the precision of one who had witnessed many transformations in that house. "Come with me, miss. We have little time to prepare you for the party," she said, her voice firm but gentle, as some employees helped take William to his room. Virginia guided Emily through the luxurious corridors of the Carter mansion towards the dressing room. Her experienced hands carried several pieces of clothing and accessories that once belonged to William's late wife. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden shadows through the tall windows, as the first guests were already arriving for the party. Emily's hands trembled as she touched the midnight blue silk dress Virginia had chosen. "I never thought I would wear anything like this in my whole life. On the streets I learned to be invisible, but now I need to be the center of attention. How will I manage to fool all these rich people? They will realize at first glance that I don't belong to this world," Emily murmured, her voice choked with anxiety. The dressing room seemed like a transformation stage, with Virginia skillfully moving between combs, brushes, and beauty products. The housekeeper, who initially showed distrust, now worked with surprising dedication to transform Emily. Her agile hands brushed the beggar's black hair, applying creams and oils that gradually revealed a natural shine long hidden by life on the streets. Listen carefully, Emily. Don't let them intimidate you. I saw how Mr. William looks at you, with the same respect he had for his first wife. He saw something special in you, something that goes beyond these expensive clothes and jewels. Keep your head held high and remember, you are here by his choice, not theirs, Virginia whispered, as she adjusted the pearl necklace around Emily's neck. The main hall of the mansion was already filled with guests when Emily descended the stairs, each step carefully calculated in the high heels that Virginia had taught her to wear. The murmur of conversations gradually diminished until a silence laden with judgment took hold of the environment. Ladies with expensive dresses whispered behind their champagne glasses, while men in suits cast indiscreet glances. I can feel their eyes judging me, stripping me of this luxury mask they have put on me. But I won't let them intimidate me. William trusted me, and I won't disappoint the last wish of a dying man, thought Emily, keeping her chin up as she crossed the hall. A middle-aged woman, covered in jewels and with a malicious smile, approached Emily with a glass of champagne. Her strong perfume and arrogant posture made her intention of confrontation clear. Other high society ladies approached, forming an intimidating circle around Emily. So this is William's new wife? Dear, you must tell us how you met our dear friend. It must have been a fascinating story considering your humble origins. Or should we say, your origins on the streets? The woman provoked, her voice distilling venom disguised as cordiality. Dr. Ethan, who was watching the scene closely, tried to intervene but was interrupted by more guests joining the humiliation spectacle. Emily felt her heart racing, but remained steadfast, remembering Virginia's words. Her hands gripped the borrowed party bag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. You're right, madam. My origins are humble, and I'm not ashamed of that. William chose me not for what I have or where I come from, but for who I am. And if you're so interested in origins, perhaps we should discuss how your family acquired their fortune during the Revolution. Emily responded, surprising herself with the firmness of her words. The murmur in the hall increased considerably, and Charlotte, who was watching everything from a corner, seemed torn between satisfaction at seeing Emily humiliated and concern over the scandal that was forming. William, however, chose this moment to make his entrance. Leaning on a cane and still wearing his impeccable suit, he crossed the hall with a dignity that his physical condition could not diminish. I see you've already met my guest of honor. Emily may not have been born in a golden cradle like you, but she has something that a lot of money can't buy: dignity. While you worry about keeping up appearances, she has maintained her humanity even in the worst circumstances, William declared, his voice weak but laden with authority. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes but held them back. William approached her, gently taking her hand and leading her to the center of the hall. The guests moved away, creating a circle around them. William, you didn't need to do this. I know who I am and I'm not ashamed of it, but I also know that you're risking a lot by defending me like this. Your reputation, your legacy. Why risk it all for someone you've only known for a few hours? Emily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. While the improvised couple commanded the attention of the hall, Charlotte seized the distraction to discreetly ascend the stairs towards her father's office. Her heels were silenced by the thick carpet as she rummaged through drawers and cabinets with feverish determination. Virginia, who had silently followed her, observed from the doorway with a worried expression. There has to be something here, something that explains why my father is acting this way. He would never do something so impulsive without a reason, Charlotte murmured to herself, her hands trembling as she opened yet another drawer. The party continued downstairs, the music and conversations muffling the sounds of Charlotte's frantic search. William slowly danced with Emily, ignoring the guests' disapproving looks. Dr. Ethan kept close, discreetly monitoring his patient's health. Miss Emily, you have brought light to my final moments. I want you to know that I chose you not by chance, but because I saw in your eyes the same kindness that I saw in the eyes of my first wife. There is much more at stake here than anyone can imagine. William confessed, his voice merely a whisper as he led Emily through the waltz. Suddenly, a muffled scream came from upstairs. Charlotte had found an old folder, hidden behind a painting in the office. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the time-yellowed documents. Old photographs fell to the floor, revealing images that made her heart stop. It can't be. This woman in the photos. She looks exactly like Emily, but the date. This was over 30 years ago. My God, what is my father hiding? Charlotte exclaimed, her voice choked with the shock of her discovery. Dinner was served in the impressive Carter Mansion's banquet hall, beneath the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. The guests took their places at the long mahogany table as Virginia and other servants served the first course. Emily sat to William's right, her hands still trembling slightly as she grasped the silver cutlery. Charlotte returned to the hall with a disturbing smile on her lips, carrying an old folder that she placed beside her plate. So it's interesting how fate plays tricks on us, isn't it, Emily? Or should I say Emily Gonzalez, former employee of the Carter Mansion? I found your employee records from 2015. Curious how you forgot to mention that little detail when my father found you on the streets, Charlotte announced, her voice cutting through the silence like a razor. The clinking of cutlery abruptly ceased, and all eyes turned to Emily. Her face paled, but her eyes remained steady, meeting Charlotte's from across the table. William observed the scene with an unreadable expression, his fingers gently drumming on the edge of the table. Virginia, who was pouring the wine, nearly dropped the bottle, her hands visibly shaking. Yes, I worked here as a maid 8 years ago. I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was relevant, since I was unjustly fired without the right to defend myself. But I see you remember that well, Charlotte. After all, you were the one who orchestrated it all, Emily responded, her voice laden with contained anguish. Charlotte rose from her chair, bracing her hands on the table with enough force to make the glasses tremble. Her eyes shone with a mixture of triumph and anger as she flipped through the documents in the folder. The guests watched the confrontation like spectators of a particularly dramatic play. So now you want to tell your version of the story? Why don't you tell everyone how you were caught messing with my late mother's personal belongings? How you rummaged through drawers when you thought no one was looking? You're nothing but an opportunistic thief who came back to try a bigger con, Charlotte accused, her voice echoing through the hall. Emily stood up as well, her hands trembling but her stance firm. The blue silk dress shimmered in the candlelight, contrasting with the tears that threatened to fall from her eyes. Dr. Ethan, seated near William, closely observed his patient's reactions to each new revelation. You know very well that I was just cleaning the room that day. I found a photo that had fallen behind the dresser, a photo that seemed too important to be lost. When I tried to return it, you accused me of theft without even letting me explain. You ruined my reputation, ensuring that no one else would hire me in the neighborhood. Do you know how many doors closed for me after that? Emily countered, her voice thick with restrained emotion. William tried to stand, his face growing increasingly pale. Virginia quickly moved to help him, but he gestured for her to step back. Dr. Ethan was already on his feet, discreetly approaching his patient. Charlotte, my daughter, you never told me this story. Emily, what photo was it that you found? Why would my daughter react so extremely to a simple photograph? William questioned, his voice weak but determined as beads of sweat began to form on his brow. Charlotte hesitated for a moment, her face losing some of its color. Emily seized the pause to continue her revelation, her words pouring out like a repressed torrent over the years. The guests remained in absolute silence, absorbing every word of the unfolding drama. It was a photo of you with a woman, Mr. William, a woman who looked very much like me, embracing you in front of this very mansion. The date on the back was 30 years ago, and there was a message written, "Forever your love, Eleanor." When Charlotte saw that I had found the photo, her eyes filled with a hatred I'll never forget, Emily revealed, her words falling like bombshells in the hall's silence. William staggered, clutching his chest. Dr. Ethan immediately ran to support him, while Virginia was already on the phone calling an ambulance. Charlotte remained paralyzed, documents slipping from her hands and scattering across the table. Eleanor, that was the name of my first wife, who died before Charlotte was born. Emily, you are identical to her. How did I not realize it before? The same features, the same kind gaze. It's no coincidence you're here today, William murmured, his voice growing weaker, before collapsing onto the table. Chaos ensued in the dining room. Guests stood up in alarm, some running to help, others just watching in horror. Emily and Charlotte, momentarily forgetting their rivalry, rushed to help William. "Mr. William, please hold on. There is so much I need to know, so many unanswered questions. Why was that photo so important? What is the real connection between your first wife and me?" Emily pleaded, holding William's cold hand. Virginia, who had rushed upstairs to fetch William's medications, came running down the stairs, her face a mask of terror. Her steps echoed through the room as she approached Charlotte. The guests began to discreetly leave, feeling they were witnessing something far more intimate and disturbing than a mere family dispute. "Miss Charlotte, the safe. Mr. Williams' office safe is open. All of Mr. Williams' important documents, the family jewels, everything has disappeared," Virginia exclaimed, her voice trembling with despair. Dr. Ethan was trying to stabilize William, who was now unconscious on the dining table. Charlotte looked back and forth between Emily and the stairs leading to the office, her face a mask of confusion and fear. The distant sound of sirens began to approach the mansion. "How is this possible? The safe can only be opened with two different keys, one that my father always carries with him, and another that was kept in my mother's room along with that photo Emily found 8 years ago," Charlotte murmured, the realization of what was happening slowly dawning on her face. The hospital room was plunged into a tense silence, broken only by the constant beeping of the cardiac monitors. William, now conscious but still weak, was sitting up in his bed, propped up on several pillows. Charlotte paced nervously back and forth, while Emily remained seated in a chair near the window, still wearing the blue dress from the party. Dr. Ethan had just left after performing another round of tests. "Before you start discussing the empty safe or the missing keys, I need to make an announcement. A week ago, I transferred my entire fortune to various charitable institutions. The Carter Mansion will be turned into a shelter for the homeless, and my investments will fund social projects for the next 20 years, William declared, his voice weak but resolute. Charlotte abruptly stopped her frantic pacing, her face draining of all color. Her high heels made a shrill sound on the hospital floor as she whirled around to face Emily. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably as she pointed an accusing finger at the former maid. "This is your fault. You poisoned my father against me. First you infiltrate our home as a servant, then you reappear pretending to be an innocent beggar. And now this. What was your plan? To make my father donate everything to your sham charity institutions?" Charlotte shouted, her voice choked with a mixture of anger and despair. William tried to get up from his bed, but his weakness prevented him. Emily remained seated, her hands clasped in her lap, maintaining a surprising calm in the face of the accusations. The night sky, visible through the hospital window, began to lighten with the first signs of dawn. "Charlotte, are you so blinded by money that you can't see what's happening? I only met Emily 2 days ago. I made this decision long before, when I realized my daughter had become exactly the kind of person your mother so despised. Someone who values money more than family ties," William responded, each word seeming to drain his strength. Virginia burst into the room at that moment, carrying an old dusty box. Her normally impeccable uniform was rumpled, and her hair, usually neatly tied back, fell in loose strands around her face. Her hands were trembling as she placed the box on the table beside William's hospital bed. "Sirs, I found this at the bottom of the closet in the old lady's room. They're photos and documents that should have been destroyed years ago. But I couldn't get rid of them," Virginia confessed, her voice laden with guilt. The old photos began spilling out of the box as Charlotte abruptly opened it, scattering across the hospital bed. Emily slowly got up from her chair, approaching as if drawn by an invisible force. In the time-yellowed photographs, a young woman smiled, wearing the same pearl necklace that Emily wore that night. Emily then gingerly picked up one of the photos. Charlotte violently grabbed some of the photos, her eyes wide as she scanned the images. In one of them, the mysterious woman held a baby, with a younger William by her side, all smiling in front of a hospital. "I don't understand. This photo was taken on the day I was born, but this is not the woman I was always shown as my mother. Father, what the hell is going on here? Who is this woman?" Charlotte demanded, her voice breaking on the last word. William closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength to reveal a long-held secret. Virginia moved silently towards the door, as if she wanted to escape what was to come. The heart monitor accelerated slightly, marking the tension of the moment. Elena Gonzalez was her name, my first and true love. We met when she worked as a nurse in this very hospital. She was kindness itself, always helping those most in need, even when we had almost nothing. We married in secret, because my family would never accept me marrying someone of humble origin, William revealed, his voice choked with emotion. Emily sat heavily on the edge of the bed, her legs weakening with each new revelation. More photos fell from the box. Eleanor pregnant, Eleanor with a newborn baby, Eleanor smiling in front of a small, simple house. Mr. William, are you saying that this woman, Elena, she was my mother, but how? She died when I was very young. I was raised in an orphanage. I was always told she was a domestic worker who died in an accident, Emily questioned, silent tears streaming down her face. Charlotte stumbled until she leaned against the wall, her eyes fixed on a specific photo that trembled in her hands. The image showed Elena holding two newborn baby girls, apparently twins. William extended a trembling hand, asking to see the photo that had so disturbed his daughter. Elena did not die in childbirth, as you were led to believe, Charlotte. She gave birth to twins, you and Emily, but my family, they could not accept it. On the night we planned to flee with the two babies, there was an accident. Elena, she did not survive. One of the babies was taken to an orphanage, while the other was raised as the legitimate daughter of the Carters, William confessed, his voice barely more than a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily and Charlotte stared at each other, seeing for the first time each other's reflection, not as rivals but as long-separated sisters. Virginia sobbed silently in the corner of the room, the weight of decades of secrets finally being released. So that's why you chose me on that street. It wasn't a coincidence. You recognized me. You recognized in me the face of Elena, the face of your first wife, our true mother, Emily murmured, her voice choked by the life-changing discovery. Back at the Carter mansion, Emily climbed the stairs towards the room that once belonged to Eleanor. Virginia had revealed its location, an isolated area on the third floor, untouched for decades. The blue party dress had been replaced by simple borrowed clothes, but the pearl necklace still remained around her neck, a tangible link to her newly discovered past. Her hands trembled as she turned the dusty doorknob. My mother slept here, breathed this same air, dreamed of a different future within these very walls. How long did William keep this room locked, guarding all these memories that could have changed our lives? Emily murmured to herself as the door opened with a melancholic creak. The room was exactly as Elena had left it on that final, fateful night. The bed still made with yellowed sheets, a dress hanging on the hanger, half-empty perfume bottles on the dressing table. Emily approached a small writing desk by the window where a carved wooden box caught her attention. Inside, she discovered dozens of letters, some still sealed, others with edges worn from being read so often. My love, William, if you are reading this letter, something went wrong with our escape plan. I can no longer bear to see our daughters separated, living such different lives. Charlotte and Emily deserve to grow up together, knowing their true origins. Your family may have power and money, but they have no right to destroy what we built, Emily read aloud, her tears falling on the aged paper. Charlotte, who had silently followed Emily to the room, remained standing in the doorway, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Her eyes scanned the environment, trying to absorb every detail of this place that held so many secrets about her true origins. The cream-colored walls, faded by time, seemed to whisper stories of a deliberately forgotten past. So it's true. We really are sisters, not half-sisters as we thought, but twins. That's why I always felt this inexplicable emptiness, this feeling that something was missing. You weren't just the maid I wrongfully fired. You were the part of me that was torn away at birth, Charlotte confessed, her voice choked with emotion repressed for years. Emily continued uncovering more letters, each one revealing new details about the forbidden love between Elena and William, about their escape plans, about a mother's despair at being forced to separate from one of her daughters. The afternoon sun lazily entered through the gaps in the dusty curtains, illuminating particles of dust that danced in the air like ghosts of the past. Elena knew she was in danger. In this letter, she mentions threats, Says the Carter family was planning something terrible. She intended to take us away, but Charlotte, do you realize? The accident that took her life may not have been an accident, Emily revealed, her voice trembling with the gravity of the discovery. A sharp scream from Virginia echoed through the mansion's hallways, interrupting the moment of revelations. The sisters ran out of the room, racing down the stairs. They found the governess kneeling beside William, who had fallen in the middle of the living room. His face was paler than ever, and his breathing came in painful gasps. "My daughters, forgive me. I should have told everything sooner. Elena tried to warn me about my family's evil, but I was too cowardly to face them. Now time is running out, and there is still so much to explain," William murmured between difficult breaths. Dr. Ethan arrived in minutes, called by a panicked Virginia. His years of experience could not mask the concern on his face as he examined William. Emily and Charlotte remained hand in hand, united for the first time in their lives, watching helplessly as the doctor worked. "Blood pressure is dropping rapidly. Heart rate is highly irregular. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. Virginia, call an ambulance. Ladies, prepare a bag with his important documents and medications," ordered the doctor, his professional voice barely concealing the urgency of the situation. The journey to the hospital was a race against time. William alternated between moments of consciousness and unconsciousness, always trying to say something that seemed urgent. Emily held his left hand, Charlotte his right, as the ambulance siren cut through the silence of the Houston streets. "Dad, please hold on. We've just discovered the truth. You can't leave us now. There's still so much we need to know, so many unanswered questions," pleaded Charlotte, tears streaming freely down her face. The hospital staff was already waiting at the emergency entrance, alerted by Dr. Ethan. William was quickly taken to the examination room, leaving the sisters in the waiting room, still processing all the revelations of that surreal day. Virginia arrived moments later, carrying Elena's letters that Emily had found. "I never thought I'd live to see this day. Elena always said that the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how much time passes. She would be happy to see her daughters finally reunited, even though the circumstances are so painful," said the governess, her voice heavy with years of secrets kept. Dr. Ethan emerged from the examination room with a grave expression on his face. His impeccable white coat contrasted with the deep circles that marked his tired face. The sisters rose simultaneously, bracing themselves for yet another news that could change their lives. "There is one last hope for Mr. Carter. An experimental treatment in Switzerland has shown promising results in cases like his. But there are two problems. We need to transfer him within the next 24 hours, and the treatment costs $5 million. With the donation of his entire estate to charity, I don't know how." His voice trailed off, leaving the rest of the sentence hanging in the air like a sentence. Emily and Charlotte exchanged a meaningful look, years of resentment dissolving in the face of the possibility of losing their father again. The pearl necklace around Emily's neck seemed to weigh a ton, laden with Eleanor's legacy and all the choices that led to this moment. "Doctor, how much would it cost to start the treatment immediately?" "Maybe we can find a way to raise the money. There must be something that hasn't been transferred to the charities yet," Charlotte asked desperately, when a detail in the letters in her hands caught her attention. A Swiss bank account number, handwritten by Eleanor over 30 years ago. The Cathedral of St. Emily the Real stood imposing against the cloudy Houston sky, its Gothic spires reaching the laden clouds like fingers trying to touch the heavens. Emily climbed the worn stone steps, still wearing her mother's pearl necklace, her only tangible link to Elena. One of the letters found mentioned this specific place, describing in detail the secret wedding performed on a rainy night 30 years ago. Eleanor chose this place to marry William, away from the eyes of the society that condemned them. "I can feel your presence here, Mom. Every step I take on this sacred ground seems to bring me closer to you, and the truth that is still hidden," Emily whispered to herself as she pushed the heavy wooden door. The interior of the cathedral was silent, except for the distant sound of sobs echoing between the century-old columns. Emily followed the sound, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor, until she found Charlotte kneeling before the main altar. Her sister held an antique rosary that Emily recognized from the photos found in Elena's room. The light filtered through the stained glass windows, created a multicolored pattern over the two sisters, united by fate in that sacred place. I came here seeking answers, trying to understand why our mother chose this place for her secret wedding, but the more I discover, the more questions arise. How could they separate us? How could they destroy an entire family? Charlotte spoke between sobs, not turning to face her sister. Emily knelt beside Charlotte, noticing for the first time how truly identical they were. The same face shape, the same brown eyes, even the way the tears ran down their cheeks. The silence of the cathedral seemed to amplify every breath, every beat of their synchronized hearts. I spent years on the streets, surviving on crumbs, while you lived in the luxury of the Carter mansion. I should hate you for that, but now I realize that you were also a victim. We were both pawns in a cruel game that began even before we were born, Emily replied, her voice echoing between the ancient walls. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted the moment of connection between the sisters. Virginia emerged from behind a column, her impeccable uniform contrasting with the tormented expression on her face. She carried an old folder, her hands visibly trembling as she approached the two women. I couldn't bear to carry this burden on my conscience any longer. I need to confess something terrible. It was me who separated you two. It wasn't the Carter family, it wasn't an accident. It was me, Virginia declared, her voice breaking with each word. Charlotte stood up abruptly, her rosary falling from her hands and hitting the marble floor with a metallic sound that echoed through the empty cathedral. Emily remained kneeling, her hands gripping tightly the wooden bench in front of her. The air inside the church seemed to have grown heavier, laden with the weight of Virginia's confession. How could you do this to us? You were the person our mother trusted the most. Elena trusted you to protect us, to keep the family together, Charlotte shouted, her voice amplified by the cathedral's acoustics. Virginia opened the folder with trembling hands, revealing documents and photos that neither of the sisters had seen before. Her tears fell onto the papers as she explained. I loved your father ever since I started working at the mansion. When Elena appeared, so young and beautiful, conquering William's heart, something inside me broke. I manipulated the Carter family, told lies about Elena, made it seem like she planned to run away with only one of the babies. The accident. I knew about their plan to flee that night. I warned the Carter family, Virginia confessed, each word seeming to tear at her throat. Emily finally stood up, her legs shaking with the weight of the revelations. The light entering through the stained glass now seemed colder, transforming the sacred setting into a nightmarish scene. Charlotte had approached Virginia, her fists clenched, containing the urge to assault the woman who had destroyed her family. You not only separated us, you killed our mother. All those times you comforted me when I cried asking for her, all the stories you made up about your maternal love for me. It was all a lie, Charlotte accused, her voice choked with anger and pain. Emily's phone rang, breaking the tension of the moment. It was Dr. Ethan, his usually calm voice now laden with urgent concern. The two sisters drew closer to hear the call, while Virginia remained paralyzed in her place, still holding the incriminating documents. I need you to return to the hospital immediately. Your father, he simply disappeared. The nurse went to check on him 10 minutes ago and the room was empty. In his condition, he couldn't have walked out on his own, the doctor explained, the panic evident in his voice. Virginia dropped the folder, papers and photos scattering across the cathedral floor like leaves in the wind. Her face had lost all color, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. My God, he found out. William must have overheard my phone conversation last night. I was negotiating with interested buyers for the safe's documents. He couldn't know that I was the one who emptied the safe, that I'm still trying to prevent you from reuniting, Virginia confessed, her words pouring out in a desperate rush. The sisters exchanged glances, years of separation and resentment dissolving in the face of the urgent moment. The distant sound of sirens began to break the cathedral's peace, reminding them that time was running out. We need to find our father before it's too late. Virginia knows all of his secrets, all the places he could be, and she's going to help us find him, even if we have to drag her with us, Emily declared, her voice carrying an authority she never knew she possessed. The rain lashed the small suburban house in Houston, where Virginia had lived for decades, hiding her modest life from the prying eyes of the Carter family. Emily and Charlotte followed the governess up the rain-soaked steps leading to the back door, as lightning illuminated the dark sky like camera flashes capturing their despair. Dr. Ethan had sent ambulances to various points around the city, but the sisters knew by the instinct only twins possess that their father would be here. I can't believe we spent so many years living a lie constructed by you, Virginia. Every happy moment, every memory I have from my childhood is tainted by your manipulations, Charlotte accused, her voice competing with the storm's noise. Virginia unlocked the door with trembling hands, revealing a surprisingly cozy interior filled with photographs on the walls. The sisters froze as they realized that every inch of the walls was covered with pictures of William, some taken openly at social events, others clearly captured secretly over the years. The air inside the house was heavy with the scent of medicine and wilted rose petals. You don't understand. No one ever understood. I spent 30 years loving a man who never saw me as more than a faithful servant. Elena came out of nowhere, and in a few months conquered what I could never achieve in a lifetime of dedication, Virginia confessed, her words coming out as a painful lament. A sound from the bedroom at the back of the house caught the attention of the three women. Emily was the first to move, running towards the sound, with Charlotte right behind her. They found William sitting in an antique chair, surrounded by more photographs and newspaper clippings. His face was paler than ever, and his hands trembled as he held a yellowed envelope. So this is where you kept all your obsessions, Virginia. Every moment of my life catalogued and filed like a sick exhibition. I found the letters you intercepted, the ones Elena sent me from the hospital after the girls were born. You hid them all these years, William said, his voice weak but laden with contained rage. Virginia fell to her knees on the dusty floor, her tears leaving dark trails on her aged face. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if nature responded to the tension within that small house. The windows trembled with the force of the wind, and the sound of rain created a sinister soundtrack for the unfolding scene. I loved you more than Elena ever did. She was young and beautiful, yes, but I knew every detail of your life, every preference, every dream. When I found out she was pregnant with twins, I knew I had to act. One of the babies had to disappear, so you wouldn't have reasons to stay with her. Virginia sobbed, revealing the extent of her obsession. Emily approached William, noticing how his breathing was irregular and how his hands were trembling more and more. Charlotte was already on the phone with Dr. Ethan, her urgent voice cutting through the sound of the storm. The small room seemed suffocating with the weight of so many secrets finally revealed. Dad, we need to take you back to the hospital. The experimental medication is on its way, but you need immediate care. Please, we can't lose you now that we're finally together again, Emily pleaded, holding her father's cold hand. William tried to get up, but his legs weakened. His next words were interrupted by a violent cough, and drops of blood stained the envelope he still held. Virginia instinctively moved to help him, her years of devotion overriding the moment of confession. Even now, after everything you've done, your first instinct is to care for him. What kind of sick love is that, Virginia? You destroyed 3 lives, separated 2 sisters, and for what? To be able to stay close to the man who would never be yours? Charlotte questioned, her words cutting the air like blades. A particularly loud thunderclap made the lights flicker, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When the power came back, William was even paler, his breathing now coming in painful gasps. Dr. Ethan had sent a message informing that the helicopter with the experimental medication was trying to reach them through the storm. My daughters, I need you to know. The money I donated, it wasn't all. There's an account, in Elena's name. William tried to speak, each word seeming to cost him immense effort. Virginia suddenly stood up, running to an old bookshelf in the corner of the room. Her hands trembled as she pulled a metal box hidden behind dusty books. The sisters watched each movement, torn between concern for their father and curiosity about yet another secret about to be revealed. I've kept this for all these years, the key to the account in Switzerland that Elena opened. William didn't know, but she sold all the jewelry he gave her before she died. The money was for the daughters to ensure they'd never have to depend on the Carter family, Virginia confessed, extending a small, sealed envelope. William began to cough violently, his body convulsing in the old chair. Emily and Charlotte ran to support him, while Virginia dropped the metal box, its contents spilling across the floor like pieces of a macabre puzzle. Quick, lay him on the floor. Charlotte, hold his legs. Virginia, where's the phone? We need an ambulance now, Emily shouted, her years living on the streets having taught her to remain calm in emergency situations. The sound of helicopter blades started to approach, struggling against the storm that seemed determined to prevent any attempt at rescue. Charlotte ran to the window, frantically waving her lit cell phone, trying to signal their location. The rain kept pouring relentlessly, turning the streets into raging rivers. "The helicopter is here, Dad. The medication has arrived. Please hold on a little longer, don't leave us now," Charlotte implored, her tears mingling with the rainwater that came through the open window. William briefly opened his eyes, focusing his gaze alternately on each of his daughters. A faint smile played on his lips, as if he was finally at peace seeing his girls together again. Virginia watched the scene from the corner of the room, her hands nervously twisting the apron she still wore out of habit. "Forgive me for not being stronger, for not protecting you. Elena was right. True love always finds its way," William murmured, before his eyes closed and his head lolled to the side. Emily immediately started performing chest compressions, her firm hands pumping life back into her father's heart. Charlotte counted the seconds out loud, while Virginia ran to fetch water and towels. The noise of the helicopter grew closer, but the storm raged with renewed force. "Come on, Dad, it can't end like this. There's still so much we need to know, so much we need to live as a family," Emily shouted between compressions, her tears falling on William's pale face. Charlotte received frantic updates on her cell phone from the helicopter pilot, who was battling winds over 100 kilometers per hour. The experimental medication, William's last hope, was just a few meters away, but nature seemed determined to prevent its fate. "The pilot says it's impossible to land with this storm. The winds are too strong. We need a miracle, Emily, or we're going to lose our father for the second time," Charlotte yelled, her voice breaking with the weight of despair. Virginia fell to her knees beside William, taking his cold hand between hers. Decades of obsessive love seemed to melt into tears of genuine remorse. The room was now fully illuminated by the constant flashes of lightning, creating an almost surreal scene. "Forgiveness, William. Forgiveness, Eleanor. I didn't know love could be so destructive. I thought I was protecting my heart, but I ended up destroying an entire family," sobbed Virginia, as the sound of the helicopter struggling against the storm echoed like a cry of despair into the tempestuous night. Dr. Ethan sent one last desperate message. The pilot had only 5 more minutes of fuel to attempt a landing, or he would be forced to return to the hospital. William's life literally hung by a thread, swaying between the determination of his daughters and the fury of the storm that refused to relent. "Emily, Charlotte, my daughters," William whispered weakly, his eyes opening for a brief moment before his head lolled to the side again, and the makeshift heart monitor on his wrist began emitting a shrill, continuous tone. The storm had turned Houston's streets into raging rivers, but Emily ran nonetheless, her bare feet slipping on the wet asphalt. She had left her shoes behind at Virginia's house. They would only slow her down in this desperate race against time. Her street-hardened body moved agilely between stalled cars and deep puddles forming at corners. The rain mixed with her tears as she frantically sought help. "I spent years surviving alone on these streets, knowing every alley, every shortcut. Now I need to use that knowledge to save my father. I can't lose him now, not when I've finally discovered who I truly am," she thought, her heart beating in time with her frantic steps. Meanwhile, at Virginia's house, Charlotte was frantically rummaging through drawers and cabinets, throwing decades of obsession onto the soaked floor. Her fingers trembled as she opened each folder, each envelope, searching for something that could help save her father. Dr. Ethan continued resuscitation efforts on William, his professional demeanor unable to mask his growing concern. How could I have been so blind for so long? All these photos, all these documents. Virginia wasn't just a dedicated governess, she was an archivist of her own obsession, Charlotte muttered, her words almost drowned out by the roar of the storm. Emily reached the main avenue, where the waters were already knee-deep. Her years on the streets had taught her all the safe spots during floods, but tonight everything felt different, more dangerous, more desperate. A group of people huddled under a store awning, watching in disbelief as the woman ran against the current. "I need to reach the hospital before it's too late. He can't die without knowing we forgive him, that we understand his reasons. Please, God, just this one more chance." Emily cried out to the stormy skies, her voice hoarse from calling for help. Back at the house, Charlotte found a safe hidden behind a painting in Virginia's bedroom wall. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the combination dial. Virginia, watching from the doorway, finally broke her guilty silence. The combination is their wedding date, William's wedding to Elena. I kept all the important documents in there, including the original will he made 15 years ago, Virginia confessed, her voice barely audible over the sound of the storm. Dr. Ethan managed to regain William's pulse, but the makeshift monitor showed a weak and irregular heartbeat. Charlotte quickly entered the date mentioned by Virginia, and the safe's door clicked open with a metallic sound. Inside, methodically organized, were all the documents Virginia had stolen over the years. My God, the original will. He left half of his fortune to charities that help orphaned children. It was as if subconsciously he was trying to help Emily, even without knowing she was his daughter, Charlotte exclaimed, her tears falling onto the yellowed papers. Emily finally caught sight of the lights of St. Vincent's Hospital, shining through the curtain of rain. Her legs were shaking with exhaustion, but she couldn't stop now. A police car slowly passed by her, and Emily waved frantically, screaming for help. "Please, we need help. My father is having a heart attack. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. He's at the Jasmine Street house number 47 with Dr. Ethan," she shouted, her hoarse voice cutting through the roar of the storm. Virginia fell to her knees beside the open safe, her trembling hands touching the documents she had guarded for so long. Dr. Ethan continued monitoring William, each second feeling like an eternity. "It wasn't just the will I hid. There's more. Elena left letters for each of the girls to be delivered on their 18th birthday, letters explaining the whole truth, telling them about the escape plan, about the money hidden in Switzerland. I destroyed the future she so carefully planned for her daughters," Virginia sobbed, decades of guilt finally overflowing. Charlotte frantically flipped through the documents, each page revealing more details of her parents' meticulous plan. Eleanor had secretly sold jewelry and properties, building a fund to secure her daughter's future, away from the Carter family's influence. William, in turn, had altered his will several times over the years, always keeping a significant portion earmarked for charities. They never gave up on us, Emily. Even separated, even with all the lies and manipulations, they tried to protect our future. And you, Virginia, kept it all for pure selfishness, Charlotte accused, her voice shaking with anger and disappointment. Emily finally arrived at the hospital, drenched and panting, only to find the building in darkness. The storm had knocked out power across the entire block, and the emergency generator was failing. Her legs finally gave out and she fell to her knees in the dark lobby. "It can't be. Not after all this. There has to be another hospital nearby, somewhere with power. My dad can't die because of a storm," she shouted to the staff hurrying around with flashlights. Back at Virginia's house, Charlotte kept uncovering more incriminating documents. There were records of wiretapped calls, secretly taken photographs, even detailed reports of Elena's movements in the days leading up to her death. Virginia watched in silence as her meticulous file of obsession was exposed. Every document here tells a story of betrayal. It wasn't love you felt for my father, Virginia. It was a sickly obsession that destroyed innocent lives. How could you live with that weight on your conscience for so many years? Charlotte questioned, her voice dripping with contempt. Dr. Ethan checked William's vitals once more, his expression growing more worried by the moment. The police finally arrived, guided by Emily's directions, but the ambulance was still struggling to navigate the flooded streets. "We need to move him now. If we wait any longer, it might be too late. But with this storm and no power at the nearest hospital, our options are limited," the doctor explained, his professional demeanor barely containing the desperation of the situation. Virginia dragged herself over to William, taking his cold hand in hers. Her red-rimmed eyes roamed over the pale face of the man she had obsessively loved for decades. Charlotte kept uncovering more documents, each revelation more shocking than the last. "Forgive me, William. Forgive me, Elena. I was not just your faithful governess. I was your jailer. Every moment of happiness you shared with Elena, I documented and filed away, feeding my hatred and obsession. Now your daughters are paying the price for my selfishness," Virginia confessed, her voice thick with remorse. Emily returned to the hospital with a group of volunteer doctors who had offered to help, but the building remained dark. The emergency generators could only power the most essential equipment, and even then, they were failing. The rain continued to fall relentlessly, as if the heavens were weeping along with the separated sisters. I can't accept that after everything we've been through, after finally uncovering the truth about our family, we're going to lose our father because of a power failure. There has to be another solution. Emily shouted, her voice echoing through the dark lobby. Charlotte found one last envelope in the back of the safe, sealed with red wax and addressed to William. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal, revealing a letter written by Elena on the night of her death. Virginia let out a muffled sob as she recognized the envelope she had hidden for so long. My love, if you are reading this, something went wrong with our plan to escape. But know that our love created something stronger than your family's hatred. Two perfect little girls carrying the best of both of us. One day they will find each other and the truth will come out. The money I saved in Switzerland is for them, so they can have the life we dreamed of together. Charlotte read, her voice breaking with every word. The police officers began organizing a rescue operation, using their radios to coordinate with other hospitals in the region. The storm had left a trail of destruction through the city, and several hospitals were operating only on emergency power. Emily, drenched and exhausted, refused to give up. There's a private hospital 20 minutes from here in the upper part of the city. If we can get an ambulance with four-wheel drive, we might be able to make it there. It's our only chance, she suggested, years of surviving on the streets having taught her never to accept no for an answer. The sound of the ambulance sirens finally cut through the roar of the storm, bringing a glimmer of hope to the desperate situation. Charlotte quickly gathered the most important documents in her bag, determined not to let any more secrets remain hidden. Virginia remained kneeling beside William, her tears falling silently on the face of the man her obsession had helped destroy. The hospital is without power, but maybe this is a sign. A moment of darkness before the dawn. Helena always said that the greatest trials bring the greatest blessings, Virginia whispered, her words lost in the noise of the storm that continued to batter Houston. The Cathedral of St. Emily La Reale, which hours earlier had been the stage for revelations about the past, now transformed into an improvised emergency unit. The wooden benches were moved aside to make way for medical equipment hastily brought from the hospital, while candles and lanterns struggled against the darkness caused by the storm. Emily and Charlotte worked frenetically to organize the space, their shadows dancing on the centuries-old walls like restless ghosts. It's amazing how this place keeps bringing us together. It was here our parents were secretly married. Here we discovered the truth about Virginia. And now it's here that we'll fight for our father's life, Emily reflected as she helped position a heart monitor near the altar. William lay on an improvised stretcher, his pale face illuminated by the flickering candlelight. Virginia remained by his side, years of dedication, even if motivated by obsession, making it impossible for her to leave now. The paramedics had managed to temporarily stabilize him, but his vital signs remained weak and irregular. I spent 3 decades guarding secrets in this church, confessing only partially my sins. Now I see that the greatest sin was not loving William, but allowing that love to become something so destructive, Virginia whispered, her words echoing among the ancient columns. The sound of the heavy door opening made everyone turn. Dr. Ethan entered, drenched and panting, carrying a medical bag against his chest. His shoes left wet trails on the marble floor as he hurried towards William. Charlotte ran to help him with the equipment, while Emily held up more candles to improve the lighting. I managed to retrieve the experimental medication from the helicopter that couldn't land. I walked 5 kilometers through the storm, but I couldn't let our last hope slip away, the doctor explained, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared the medication. The rain continued to batter the cathedral's stained glass windows, creating colorful shadows that danced over the group gathered around William. Dr. Ethan worked methodically, connecting monitors and preparing the infusion of the experimental drug. Emily watched every movement intently, her years on the streets having taught her the importance of always being alert. Doctor, what are the real chances of this treatment working? We've lost so much time, been through so much. I need to know if there's still hope, she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The moment of administering the medication was marked by a deathly silence, broken only by the sound of the rain and the monitors. Charlotte held one of her father's hands, while Emily held the other. Virginia remained a little apart, her face a mask of guilt and worry. This moment, it's as if the past and present are merging, Elena is here with us. I can feel it. She never gave up on keeping the family together, and now it's up to us to continue her fight, Charlotte murmured, silent tears streaming down her face. The first few minutes after administering the medication were tense. Dr. Ethan closely monitored William's vital signs, his expression growing more concerned with every moment. Suddenly, the monitors began emitting shrill alerts, and William's body started convulsing violently. He's having an adverse reaction. We need to stabilize him immediately. Emily, grab that blue case. Charlotte, help me keep him on the stretcher, the doctor shouted, his professional voice barely concealing his panic. Virginia ran to help, her years of experience caring for William finally being useful in a positive way. Emily and Charlotte moved in perfect synchrony, as though their years apart had never existed. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if reflecting the battle for life unfolding within the cathedral. I can't lose you now, Dad. Not after finding out I have a sister, that our family was torn apart by lies. You have to live to see our story have a different ending, Charlotte pleaded, her voice choked with tears. Dr. Ethan worked frenetically, administering emergency medications and monitoring every response of William's body. His years of medical experience had never faced such a critical situation under such adverse conditions. The candles cast dancing shadows on the cathedral walls, creating an almost surreal atmosphere. The reaction is worse than I feared. The experimental drug is attacking his already compromised immune system. We need a more definitive solution, something that can regenerate his body from within, the doctor explained, his voice heavy with concern. Emily watched everything with a feeling, as if she had already lived that moment in some distant dream. Elena's words in her recently discovered letters echoed in her mind, speaking of sacrifices and unconditional love. Charlotte noticed the change in her sister's expression, recognizing that determined look they shared. There must be something we can do. We are his daughters. We carry his blood, his strength. There must be some way to use this in our favor, Charlotte exclaimed, her voice laden with desperate determination. Dr. Ethan suddenly stopped his movements, as if he had been struck by a revelation. His eyes moved quickly between Emily and Charlotte, an idea beginning to form in his scientific mind. Virginia also seemed to understand something, her face paling even more. Elena's letters. She mentioned something about a rare genetic condition that William possesses, a condition that was passed on to his daughters. Maybe that's why the medicine isn't working on its own, Virginia murmured, decades of secrets still finding ways to surface. A new alarm sounded on the monitors, more urgent than the previous ones. William briefly opened his eyes, his gaze meeting that of his daughters before closing them again. Dr. Ethan began frantically rummaging through his medical bag, looking for something specific. I need to run a quick test. Emily, Charlotte, I need a blood sample from each of you. There's a possibility. A possibility that might be our last hope, he said, his voice betraying the urgency of the situation. Emily immediately extended her arm without hesitation. Years of life on the streets had taught her that sometimes you need to act first and question later. Charlotte followed her example, the sisters united once again by a common purpose. Virginia watched the scene with tears in her eyes, recognizing in their actions the same determination she had seen in Elena so many years ago. It's as if fate is giving us a chance to correct the mistakes of the past. Elena always said that true love finds its way no matter how long it takes, Virginia whispered, her voice almost lost in the sound of the storm. Dr. Ethan worked quickly with the blood samples, using a small portable equipment he had brought in his bag. His eyes widened as he saw the results, a mixture of hope and concern crossing his face. Charlotte squeezed Emily's hand tightly, both of them anxiously awaiting the verdict. It's as I suspected. Emily, your bone marrow type is exactly what William needs. The compatibility is perfect, something extremely rare even between father and daughter. But there's a problem. His voice momentarily failed him. Emily stepped forward, her determined face illuminated by the candlelight. Years of survival on the streets had taught her that sometimes you have to risk everything to save those you love. Charlotte began to protest, already anticipating what was to come. What's the problem, doctor? If my marrow can save my father, there's no discussion. I've survived worse on the streets, Emily stated, her voice firm despite the fear that was beginning to settle in her heart. Dr. Ethan took a deep breath before continuing. his gaze alternating between the sisters and William, who remained unconscious. The storm outside seemed to subside slightly, as if nature itself was also waiting to hear his next words. "Emily, you are extremely debilitated. Years of malnutrition and life on the streets have affected your health more than you can imagine. A bone marrow donation under these conditions could be fatal for you. We would essentially be choosing between your life and your father's," the doctor revealed, the weight of his words echoing through the silent cathedral. Dr. Ethan examined the results of Emily's blood tests with an increasingly concerned expression. The candles in the cathedral continued to flicker, casting restless shadows dancing across the ancient walls. Emily was sitting on one of the church benches, her face paler than normal, while Charlotte paced nervously back and forth. William's heart monitor emitted increasingly irregular beeps, marking the urgency of the situation. "Your hemoglobin levels are critically low, Emily. Years of malnutrition and exposure to the elements have left your body extremely debilitated. A bone marrow donation under these conditions would be like sending a wounded soldier to the front line," the doctor explained, his professional voice barely managing to conceal his concern. Charlotte abruptly stopped her frantic walk, falling to her knees before her newly discovered sister. Her hands trembled as she held Emily's, noticing for the first time how cold and fragile they were. Virginia watched the scene from afar, her own hands nervously twisting her apron, as if she wanted to undo years of manipulations along with its folds. "Please, Emily, I can't lose you now. I spent years treating you as an intruder, humiliating you, pushing you away from the mansion, all because of my pride and prejudice. If you die trying to save our father, I'll never forgive myself," Charlotte begged, her tears falling on their joined hands. Emily tried to stand up, but her legs faltered, forcing her to lean on Charlotte. The deep anemia was beginning to show its most severe effects, dark spots dancing in her vision whenever she made sudden movements. On the other side of the cathedral, William began to violently cough, drops of blood staining the white sheets. "I have no choice, Charlotte. I spent my entire life wondering why I was abandoned, why no one wanted me. Now that I've finally found my family, I can't just watch our father die without trying to help," Emily responded, her voice weak but determined. Dr. Ethan began to prepare the equipment for the preliminary exams, each movement calculated and precise, even under the flickering candlelight. Virginia approached with a tray of sterilized instruments, her years of experience as a governess making her a natural assistant in this critical moment. William opened his eyes briefly, his gaze meeting Emily's with a mixture of love and concern. "Daughter, I cannot allow you to risk your life for me. I've already made too many mistakes allowing manipulative people to tear our family apart. I wouldn't bear to be responsible for another tragedy," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte held Emily tighter when she tried to approach the gurney where William lay. Dr. Ethan had explained that any physical exertion could worsen her already precarious condition. The storm outside had subsided into a steady drizzle, as if nature itself contained its fury to witness this moment. "Emily, you never even had a chance to live a decent life. While I grew up amid luxury, you struggled to survive on the streets. How can I let you sacrifice the little you have? There must be another way, there has to be," Charlotte exclaimed, her voice thick with the weight of guilt and fear. Virginia approached with a small vial of medication, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to Dr. Ethan. Her red, tear-stained eyes moved between William and the twins, as if trying to memorize every detail of this scene. "For years, I manipulated everyone around me because of a sick love. Now, I see the true meaning of love through Emily's sacrifice." "Elena would be proud to see the strength her daughter inherited," Virginia said, each word laden with the weight of remorse. William's heart monitor began to emit more urgent alerts, his heart rate becoming increasingly erratic. Emily took advantage of Charlotte's momentary distraction to break free from her protective grip, stumbling towards the gurney. Dr. Ethan quickly supported her, noticing how cold and clammy her skin felt to the touch. "We have no more time for discussions. With each passing minute, William grows weaker. If we're going to do this, it needs to be now. Emily, last chance to back out," the doctor warned, his voice firm but gentle. Emily extended her arm to Dr. Ethan, allowing him to begin the preliminary exams. Charlotte remained close, ready to catch her sister at the slightest sign of weakness. The cathedral's candles seemed to burn with more intensity, as if Eleanor was present, watching her daughters finally united. I spent so much time feeling angry at the world, wondering why I was abandoned. Now I understand that sometimes destiny separates us only to reunite us in an even stronger way. This is my chance to give meaning to all that suffering, Emily declared, her voice betraying the weariness she felt. William began to mumble disconnected words, the high fever causing him to delirium. Virginia dampened his forehead with holy water, her gestures carrying a tenderness that went beyond her former obsession. Dr. Ethan worked quickly, collecting samples and checking vital signs. He's calling for Elena. After all these years, even on the brink of death, it's her he seeks. What kind of love is that, which survives so many lies and betrayals? Virginia questioned, more to herself than to the others. Charlotte held Emily's hand as Dr. Ethan inserted another needle into her arm, already marked by various tests. The sisters, so different in their life experiences, were now united by the same pain and the same love. The rain outside had stopped completely, leaving only the sound of dripping drops from the stained glass windows. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Emily. I was cruel to you when you worked in our house. I treated you as someone inferior, when in fact, you are the strongest of us both. Please don't let my arrogance cost you your life, Charlotte pleaded, her voice breaking with each word. Emily tried to respond, but her voice failed. Her eyelids were starting to grow heavy, and the world around her seemed to spin faster and faster. Dr. Ethan immediately noticed the changes in her vital signs, his professional demeanor unable to hide his concern. Her glucose levels are dropping rapidly. We need intravenous sugar and iron immediately, or we won't even be able to start the donation procedure, he ordered, his urgent voice cutting through the cathedral's silence. Virginia ran to her bag, remembering the chocolate she always carried with her, a habit acquired from the times when she cared for William during his hypoglycemic crises. Emily tried to focus her eyes on Charlotte's face, but the dark spots in her vision were becoming increasingly larger. I can't give up now. Not when we're so close. Mom didn't give up on keeping us together, even when everything seemed impossible. I have to be as strong as she was, Emily whispered, her voice growing weaker. Dr. Ethan and Charlotte tried to hold Emily as she began to slide off the chair she was sitting on. Her body, already so weakened by years of deprivation, seemed unable to withstand the stress of the exams any longer. William, as if sensing the danger his daughter was in, began calling for her in his feverish delirium. Emily, my little Emily, Elena was right. I should have fought harder for you. Forgive me, my daughters. Forgive me, he murmured, his words punctuated by fits of coughing. Virginia approached with the chocolate, but it was too late. Emily's eyes began to roll back, her body going limp in Charlotte's arms. Dr. Ethan was already in action, shouting orders and preparing emergency equipment. The candlelight seemed to flicker more intensely, as if the very atmosphere breathed along with the tension of the moment. No, Emily, please, open your eyes. It can't end like this. Not after everything we've been through. Dr. Ethan, do something, Charlotte screamed, holding her unconscious sister as tears streamed freely down her face. Fate seemed to have a cruel sense of irony. In the same altar where Elena and William had pledged eternal love, now their daughters faced the possibility of a permanent separation. Emily lay unconscious in Charlotte's arms, her face as pale as the candles illuminating the cathedral. Dr. Ethan worked frantically to stabilize her, while William's cardiac monitors continued to emit their urgent alerts. God, please don't take my sister. Not now that I've finally found her, that I finally understood the true meaning of family. Charlotte pleaded, her voice echoing through the ancient walls of the cathedral, which kept yet another secret of the Carter family within its sacred interior. The characteristic smell of hospital disinfectant was the first thing Emily registered as she regained consciousness. Her eyes slowly opened, adjusting to the flickering fluorescent light on the ceiling of the public hospital. The room was crowded, with several stretchers separated only by thin, faded curtains. The sounds of cardiac monitors and muffled conversations created a chaotic symphony echoing through the hallways. So this is how my life on the streets ends. On a hospital stretcher, after discovering I'm the daughter of a billionaire. Elena, my mother, were you also in a hospital like this when you gave birth to us? Emily thought, her inner voice thick with emotion and weakness. Charlotte was asleep in an uncomfortable chair next to the gurney, still wearing the elegant dress from the night before, now wrinkled and stained. Her face showed clear signs of exhaustion, and her fingers, usually adorned with expensive rings, were completely bare. Virginia was on the other side of the room, silently organizing a small table with medications and water. I never thought I'd see the proud Charlotte Carter sleeping in a public hospital chair, without her jewelry, without her mask of superiority. Love truly has the power to transform people, muttered Virginia, more to herself than to Emily. Dr. Ethan entered the room, his deep under-eye circles revealing he hadn't slept. He quickly consulted the notes on his clipboard before approaching Emily, checking her vital signs with precise, professional gestures. Charlotte woke up with the movement, immediately straightening up in the chair and running her hands through her disheveled hair. "Emily, you gave us quite a scare. Your anemia is much more severe than we initially thought." Charlotte sold all her jewelry to get the necessary medications and pay for the hospitalization, but the doctor's voice faltered momentarily. Emily tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her to remain lying down. Charlotte quickly stood up to adjust the pillows, her movements revealing a tenderness Emily had never seen before. The peeling walls of the public hospital seemed like silent witnesses to this transformation. "You didn't need to sell your jewelry, Charlotte. I've spent my whole life with nothing. A few more days wouldn't have made a difference. How is our father? Why isn't he here?" asked Emily, noticing William's absence in the room for the first time. Charlotte's face contorted into an expression of pain, and Virginia dropped a bottle of medicine she was holding, the sound of breaking glass echoing through the room like an ominous omen. Dr. Ethan took a deep breath before continuing, his professionalism struggling against the weight of the news he needed to deliver. "William is in an induced coma in the intensive care unit. His condition is extremely critical, and the doctors are doing everything possible to keep him stable. But this hospital has limited resources, and the situation is becoming more complicated by the hour," he explained, each word seeming to weigh a ton. Virginia began to clean up the shards of glass from the floor, her hands visibly shaking. Charlotte moved closer to Emily's gurney, holding her hand tightly, as if fearing she might disappear at any moment. The noise from the city outside seemed distant and unreal, as if they were all trapped in a time bubble. "The jewelry was just material things, Emily. For the first time in my life, I understood what truly matters. Our mother died trying to keep the family together, and now we're risking losing you and Dad at the same time," said Charlotte, her voice breaking on the last word. Dr. Ethan consulted his notes again, his face growing more serious with each line he read. Emily could feel that something was wrong, far beyond her own condition or William's state. The doctor exchanged a meaningful look with Virginia, who immediately approached to support Charlotte. "The hospital is facing an unprecedented crisis after the storm. Several pieces of equipment were damaged, and the generators are running at their limit. At the moment, we only have one functioning ventilator in the intensive care unit." He paused, the weight of what he was about to say hanging in the air. Charlotte let out a muffled sob, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, remembering Eleanor's letters, the unconditional love her mother showed until the very end. Virginia moved to close the curtain around the gurney, giving them a moment of privacy in that public environment. "The hospital will have to choose, won't they? Between keeping my father on the ventilator or using it to save me if I go through with the bone marrow donation." "That's what you're trying to tell us, Doctor?" asked Emily, her voice surprisingly calm. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Ethan adjusted Emily's heart monitor, his experienced hands moving automatically, while his mind worked on possible solutions. Charlotte had started to cry silently, years of aristocratic composure finally crumbling under the weight of this impossible choice. "Emily, you and William need the same equipment to survive. If we perform the bone marrow donation, we'll have to take him off the ventilator. If we keep him on the ventilator, you may not survive the procedure," the doctor explained, each word seeming to tear a piece of his professional soul away. Virginia approached the window, watching the city that was starting to recover from the previous night's storm. Her eyes found the tower of the Cathedral of Saint Émilie-la-Réal in the distance, where it all began and where so many secrets were revealed. Elena always said, "True love demands sacrifices." She sacrificed her life trying to keep the family together. Now once again, the Carter family faces an impossible choice, said Virginia, her voice laden with the weight of decades of regret. Emily tried to sit up again, and this time Charlotte helped her, carefully adjusting the pillows with an almost maternal care. The heart monitor registered the agitation in her frail body, but she ignored the alerts. Her eyes, so similar to Eleanor's, shone with steely determination. "There is no choice to make, Doctor. Use the ventilator for my father. I've survived on the streets for years. I can survive this too. Elena didn't give up on us, and I won't give up on my father now," declared Emily, her voice weak but resolute. Charlotte grabbed her sister's hand more tightly, shaking her head in frantic denial. Dr. Ethan began to protest, citing statistics and risks, but Emily interrupted him with a gesture. Virginia had approached again, her hands holding an old rosary that Elena used to wear. "No, Emily. I cannot allow you to sacrifice yourself like this. I've already lost a mother I never knew, a childhood with my twin sister. I won't lose you now. There has to be another way. There has to be," pleaded Charlotte, her tears falling on their joined hands. Dr. Ethan consulted his watch, knowing that every minute of indecision decreased the chances of both Emily and William. The sounds of the hospital seemed to increase in volume, as if the very environment protested against this cruel choice. A nurse quickly entered the room, whispering something in the doctor's ear that made his face pale even further. "The main generator is failing. We have at most 1 hour to make a decision before the entire electrical system collapses. If we don't choose now, we may lose them both," he announced, his professional voice finally breaking under the weight of the situation. Virginia let out a muffled sob, Elena's rosary slipping between her trembling fingers. Charlotte had started praying softly, words in Spanish and English mingling in a desperate plea. Emily watched it all with an unreal calm, as if she had already made her choice long before this moment. "Dr. Ethan, time is running out. I need you to promise that you will save my father, no matter what happens to me. Charlotte, my sister, I need you to be strong. Elena gave us life, and now it's my turn to do the same for our father," declared Emily, each word laden with the same determination her mother had shown 3 decades ago. The heart monitor began to emit more urgent alerts, as if Emily's own body protested against her decision. Dr. Ethan looked at his watch once more, time inexorably slipping away like sand in an hourglass. Fate once again forced the Carter family to make an impossible choice, testing the limits of love and sacrifice. "We have to decide now. The generator won't last much longer, and when it fails, we'll lose all the equipment. Emily, Charlotte, who will make this choice?" asked the doctor, his voice echoing through the silent room like a final sentence. Emily tore off the electrodes from the heart monitor with a determined motion, ignoring the alarmed protests from the medical staff. Her legs trembled as she tried to get up from the gurney, but her determination was stronger than her physical weakness. Charlotte and Virginia rushed to support her, while Dr. Ethan tried to block her path to the door. The morning light streamed through the hospital windows, casting long shadows on the worn floor. "I don't care what they say about risks or chances of survival. Our mother died trying to keep this family together, and I won't let her sacrifice be in vain. I'm going through with this donation, even if it's the last thing I do," Emily declared, her voice weak but laden with an unshakable determination. Charlotte felt a sudden wave of nausea as she tried to argue with her sister, needing to lean against the nearest wall. Dr. Ethan immediately noticed her paleness and the way her hand instinctively went to her abdomen. Virginia also noticed, her years of keen observation catching the signs that had gone unnoticed for weeks. "Charlotte, how long have you been experiencing these symptoms? The dizziness, the morning sickness, the sensitivity to smells. My God, you're—" Virginia didn't complete the sentence, but her eyes widened with realization. The room plunged into a stunned silence as Charlotte confirmed with a nod, silent tears streaming down her face. Emily stopped her attempt to reach the door, turning to face her sister with a mixture of surprise and emotion. Dr. Ethan quickly grabbed his stethoscope, guiding Charlotte to the nearest chair. "I'm 2 months pregnant. I didn't plan on telling like this, not with everything that's happening, but now you understand, Emily. I can't lose you. This baby deserves to know its aunt, deserves to know the story of our family's courage," Charlotte said, her voice choked with emotion. Virginia began to move furtively toward the door, her years of manipulation kicking in once again. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, quickly dialing a number while watching the unfolding scene. Dr. Ethan, busy examining Charlotte, didn't notice when she silently slipped out of the room. I need to stop this madness. I've caused enough destruction in this family. I can't let Emily sacrifice herself, not when there's another solution, Virginia muttered to herself, her words getting lost in the empty hallway. Emily stumbled to the chair where Charlotte was sitting, dropping to her knees before her. Her hands, still marked by years of life on the streets, gently touched her sister's abdomen, where the next generation of the Carters grew. Dr. Ethan continued his examination, but his eyes were moist behind his professional glasses. A baby, a new beginning for our family. One more reason for me to go through with this donation, Charlotte. This baby deserves to know its grandfather, deserves to grow up knowing it comes from a lineage of people who fight for love, Emily declared, her voice now softer. Virginia returned to the room minutes later, her face a mask of feigned concern. She approached Dr. Ethan, whispering something in his ear that made him turn pale. Charlotte and Emily watched the scene unfold with growing apprehension, recognizing the signs of another manipulation taking shape. Doctor, I just spoke to my contacts at Central Hospital. They have the proper equipment for the surgery and they can take us in immediately. We can transfer William and Emily there, Virginia announced, her voice carrying a false note of hope. Dr. Ethan frowned, grabbing his own phone to verify the information. Emily tried to get up again, but this time Charlotte held her firmly, protecting both her sister and her unborn child. Something's off here, Virginia. Why didn't you mention this possibility before? What are you scheming now? Charlotte questioned, years of living with the governess having taught her to recognize her manipulations. A nurse burst into the room, interrupting the tense moment. Their face was covered by a surgical mask, and their words came out rushed and alarming. Dr. Ethan dropped his phone, the sound of the device hitting the floor echoing like an ominous omen. Central Hospital has just been shut down due to contamination. A multi-drug resistant bacteria has been detected in the intensive care unit. All patients are being rerouted here, the nurse informed them before quickly leaving to spread the news further. Virginia staggered, her lies crumbling before they could fully take shape. Charlotte rose from the chair, her newly discovered pregnancy giving her a strength she didn't know she possessed. Emily remained on the floor, her body too weak for another attempt to get up. You never called anyone, did you, Virginia? You were trying to buy time, trying to manipulate us again. When will you stop toying with our lives? Charlotte accused, her voice shaking with anger. Dr. Ethan intervened before the situation escalated further, his professional presence momentarily calming the heightened emotions. His years of medical experience weighed on every word as he explained the gravity of the situation. With Central Hospital shut down, our situation has become even more critical. More patients will be transferred here, and our resources are already stretched thin. We need to make a decision now before it's too late, he explained, his tone making the urgency of the moment clear. Emily finally managed to get up, leaning against the empty gurney beside her. Her face was paler than ever, but her eyes shone with the same determination Elena had shown so many years ago. Charlotte tried to protest again, but her sister silenced her with a gentle gesture. I've made my decision, Doctor. I'm going through with this donation no matter the risk. This baby that Charlotte is carrying deserves to know their full story, deserves to know that their family is made of love and sacrifice, Emily declared, every word costing a visible effort. Virginia made one last desperate attempt, running to block the bedroom door. Her hands trembled as she gripped the doorframe, her slender body trying to create a physical barrier against Emily's determination. Dr. Ethan began to prepare the consent forms, his pen scratching against the paper with a sound that seemed to echo the gravity of the moment. I can't let you do this, Emily. I've already destroyed one family once. I can't bear another death on my conscience, Virginia shouted, her composure finally breaking. Charlotte approached Virginia, gently guiding her away from the door. Years of resentment and manipulation seemed to melt under the weight of the present moment. Emily watched the scene with a sad smile, recognizing that even in the darkest moments, love had the power to transform people. Virginia, you've spent your life trying to control the fate of others. But some choices need to be made out of love, not fear or obsession. "This is my choice, my sacrifice," Emily said, her voice soft but firm. Dr. Ethan finished filling out the forms, extending them for Emily to sign. Charlotte embraced her sister from behind, her tears dampening Emily's shoulder as one hand rested protectively over her belly. Virginia had crumpled into a corner, her body shaking with silent sobs. "The forms are ready, Emily. Last chance to change your mind." "Once we start the procedure, there's no going back," the doctor warned, his professional tone barely managing to conceal his own emotion. An alert sounded over the hospital speakers, announcing the imminent arrival of the first patients transferred from Central Hospital. Emily took the pen with trembling hands, ready to sign the consent documents. "Eleanor, my mother, give me strength. William, my father, hold on a little longer. Charlotte, my sister, take care of this baby and tell him about his aunt, who chose love above all else," she whispered as she signed her decision. With Central Hospital closed due to contamination, Dr. Ethan had given her an hour to prepare before the procedure. "I need a moment in the chapel, Doctor. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it with the same strength and faith my mother had," Emily murmured as Charlotte helped her up. In the hospital's small chapel, lit only by votive candles, Emily knelt on the front pew, her pale hands clutching the rosary Virginia had lent her, the same one Elena used in her prayers. Charlotte paced nervously in the hallway, one hand instinctively resting on the belly now carrying a new generation of the Carter family. An alert from Dr. Ethan interrupted the moment. William had shown signs of consciousness in the treatment unit. The sisters rushed to the room, finding their father with open eyes, though hazy and confused. The breathing tube prevented him from speaking, but his hands moved slightly. "Dad, we're here, your two daughters, finally together," pleaded Charlotte, holding one of William's hands while Emily held the other. Virginia, who was organizing William's bag, found a yellowed envelope with Elena's elegant handwriting, dated the night of her death. "My dearest daughters, if you are reading this letter, it is because fate has finally corrected the error that separated us. The money in the Swiss account is not just an inheritance. It is the proof of a mother's love who sacrificed everything to protect her daughters," read Virginia, her hands trembling. In the surgical preparation room, Dr. Ethan began to administer the medications, his precise movements masking his own emotions. Charlotte gripped her sister's hand tightly, while Virginia watched, her body shaking with silent sobs. "Doctor, please take good care of her. Elena once trusted me to protect her daughters, and I failed. I cannot bear another loss," said Virginia, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily felt the medications starting to take effect, her vision slightly blurred at the edges. The fluorescent lights above her seemed to dance and flicker, creating strange patterns on the white ceiling. Charlotte still held her hand, their fingers intertwined as if trying to make up for the lost years of sisterhood. "Charlotte, promise me you'll use the money from the Swiss account to turn the Carter mansion into a place of hope. A shelter for abandoned children, so no other family is torn apart by greed or prejudice," asked Emily, her words beginning to slur. The heart monitor began to emit slower and steadier beeps, indicating the sedatives were working. Dr. Ethan made the final adjustments to the equipment, preparing to transfer Emily to the operating room. Suddenly, a shrill and alarming sound cut through the air, and all the lights in the room flickered violently. "No, no, no. The generator can't fail now. Nurse, call maintenance immediately," shouted Dr. Ethan, his professionalism giving way to panic. The lights flickered once more before plunging the entire room into total darkness. The only sound was the increasingly faint beeping of Emily's heart monitor, running on emergency battery. Charlotte squeezed her sister's hand tighter, while Virginia ran to the door, screaming for help. "Emily, stay with me!" "Mom wouldn't let it end like this, not after everything we went through to find each other again," shouted Charlotte into the darkness, her voice lost in the chaos. The hum of the emergency generators echoed through the hospital's white corridors, creating a tense atmosphere as the medical team prepared the operating room. The lights flickered occasionally, making shadows dance across the walls like restless ghosts. Emily was already sedated on the operating table, her pale face partially obscured by the oxygen mask, while Dr. Ethan and his team prepared for the procedure. Charlotte watched through the observation room's glass, her hands pressed against it as if she could reach her sister. "Please, God, Don't let me lose my sister now. This baby needs to meet the aunt who sacrificed everything to save our father, she whispered, her tears blurring her view of what was happening on the other side of the glass. Virginia paced nervously around the prep area, her hands trembling as she organized the surgical instruments. Years of obsession and manipulation had given her an intimate knowledge of hospital routines, and she took advantage of a moment of distraction from the team to swap the labels on 2 medication vials. Her heart pounded frantically as she made the switch, her years of experience hiding secrets masking her nervousness. I can't let Emily sacrifice herself. William would never forgive me if she died. I need to stop this surgery, even if it means one more lie, she thought, pocketing the original vials. Dr. Ethan began the procedure, his experienced hands moving with precision despite the unstable lighting. Emily and William's heart monitors in different rooms pulsed in an almost synchronized rhythm, as if father and daughter were connected, even separated by hospital walls. The head nurse noticed something strange about the medication labels and discreetly called Dr. Ethan over. "Doctor, something's wrong with these labels. The coloring is different from the hospital standard," she alerted him, her voice low but urgent. Charlotte noticed the unusual commotion in the operating room, her newly discovered maternal instinct amplifying her ability to detect problems. Through the glass, she saw Virginia furtively moving towards the exit, her movements resembling those of a cornered animal. Dr. Ethan examined the vials with increasing concern, his expression changing from concentration to alarm. "Wait, don't administer any medication. Someone tampered with these labels. If we had used this combination, Emily could have had a fatal reaction." His authoritative voice froze everyone in the room. Virginia tried to escape down the corridor, but Charlotte blocked her path, her eyes blazing with a fury that recalled Eleanor in her final moments. The governess dropped the original vials from her pocket, the sound of breaking glass on the floor echoing like a confession. "How could you do this, Virginia? Wasn't separating our family once enough? Did you have to try and kill my sister too?" accused Charlotte, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Dr. Ethan quickly reviewed Emily's previous exams, his experienced mind connecting the dots of a larger conspiracy. The results made no sense. The numbers did not align with the symptoms presented. Virginia had tampered not only with the medications, but also with the exams indicating the severity of Emily's anemia. "My God, she's not as debilitated as we thought. The exams were altered to make it appear the donation would be fatal for her," exclaimed the doctor as the team quickly began adjusting the surgical protocol. Emily began to stir on the operating table, her body reacting to the first medications administered before the discovery of sabotage. Red blotches began to spread across her neck and face, a clear sign of an allergic reaction. Dr. Ethan moved swiftly, ordering adrenaline and antihistamines. "She's having a reaction to the anesthetic. Virginia must have anticipated this. She knew the family's full medical history," he shouted, his hands moving quickly to stabilize the patient. Virginia fell to her knees in the hallway, decades of secrets and manipulations crumbling around her like a house of cards. Charlotte called security as she ran to the operating room, her heart pounding frantically as she saw her sister fighting for her life on the operating table. "I just wanted to protect William. I just wanted him to love me like he loved Elena. But now I see that I've become the monster I always accused others of being," Virginia sobbed, her confession echoing through the empty white hallways. The lights in the operating room flickered violently one last time, before plunging everything into darkness, the generators finally giving in under the strain of prolonged use. The only sounds were the frantic beeps of the heart monitors, running on emergency battery power, and Emily's labored breathing as she fought against the life-threatening allergic reaction. "We need light. Someone get the auxiliary generators running. We're losing her." Dr. Ethan's voice cut through the darkness like a knife as Emily's heart monitor began emitting an increasingly erratic and worrying sound. In the makeshift intensive care unit, Emily was fighting for her life, her body still reacting violently to the tampered medication. The heart monitors blared irregular and alarming beeps as Dr. Ethan and his team worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Charlotte had not left her sister's side since they brought her from the operating room, her hands clutching Emily's tightly, as if she could anchor her to life through this contact. "You're stronger than this, Emily. You survived years on the streets, faced prejudice, loneliness, hunger. You can't let Virginia's manipulations win now. This baby needs to meet the aunt who has the same fighting spirit as our mother, Charlotte whispered, her tears falling onto their joined hands. In the room next door, something extraordinary was happening. William, who was in an induced coma, began to show signs of consciousness. His fingers moved first, then his eyes slowly opened, searching for something, or someone, in the sterile environment of the hospital. Dr. Ethan ran to examine him, marveled at this unexpected recovery. Elena, she was here. She told me to fight, not to leave our daughters alone again. Where is Emily? I need to see my daughters, William murmured, his voice hoarse and weak after so long in silence. Virginia was sitting in a chair in the hallway, guarded by 2 hospital security guards, her face a mask of remorse and fear. Charlotte, upon hearing about her father's awakening, briefly left Emily's room to confront the governess who had manipulated so many lives. Her steps echoed down the hallway like war drums, her newly discovered pregnancy seeming to give her an ancestral strength. Why, Virginia? Wasn't it enough to separate our family once? Wasn't it enough to cause our mother's death? What kind of sick love is this that only knows how to destroy? Charlotte exploded, her voice heavy with decades of repressed pain. Virginia raised her eyes, finding traces of Elena in Charlotte's face that she had never noticed before. Tears ran freely down her aged face, marked by years of bitterness and obsession. You don't understand, Charlotte. I loved your father from the first moment I saw him, long before Elena appeared. I devoted my life to him, knew every detail of his routine, every preference. When Eleanor came along so young and beautiful, something inside me broke. I couldn't bear to see him happy with another, Virginia confessed, each word seeming to tear a piece from her tormented soul. In Emily's room, the monitors began to emit more urgent alerts. Dr. Ethan ran back, leaving William in the care of the nursing staff. The spots from the allergic reaction had spread all over Emily's body, and her breathing was becoming increasingly labored. We're losing her! Her body is going into severe anaphylactic shock. We need more adrenaline and corticosteroids. Someone prepare the emergency cart, the doctor shouted, his experienced hands moving quickly between medications and equipment. Charlotte came running back to Emily's room upon hearing the commotion, leaving Virginia immersed in her own remorse. William, even weakened, tried to get up from his bed, determined to reach his daughters. The scene was chaotic, with doctors and nurses running between the 2 rooms, trying to care for father and daughter simultaneously. I can't lose my sister now, not after everything we went through to find each other. Emily, please fight. Fight like our mother fought for us, Charlotte pleaded, her voice choked with despair. Virginia, taking advantage of the confusion, managed to break free from the distracted security guards and entered Emily's room. Her hands were trembling as she took a small vial from her pocket, the antidote to the medication she herself had tampered with. Charlotte saw her and tried to stop her, but Dr. Ethan intervened. Wait, she knows the exact composition of what was administered. We need that antidote if we want to save Emily, he explained, taking the vial from Virginia's trembling hands. William, supported by a nurse, finally managed to reach Emily's room. His eyes, blurred with unshed tears, took in the scene before him. His daughter fighting for her life, Charlotte pregnant holding her sister's hand, Virginia huddled in a corner with the weight of her crimes. Eleanor always said that true love finds its way, no matter how many obstacles exist. Our daughters have found each other again, my love, despite all the lies and manipulations. Do not let them be separated again, he murmured, as if speaking directly to the spirit of his first wife. A strange and growing noise began to echo through the hospital, causing the lights to flicker ominously. Dr. Ethan, who was about to administer the antidote to Emily, stopped with the syringe in the air. The sound was coming from the overloaded generators that kept the vital equipment running. No, 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 the generators can't fail now. If we lose power, we'll lose all life support equipment, he yelled, as the lights began to flicker more and more intensely, periodically plunging the room into a terrifying darkness. The news of the Carter family spread through Houston like wildfire. Hundreds of people gathered in front of the hospital, holding candles and signs, their prayers rising to the night sky like a collective plea. Homeless people who knew Emily from her years on the streets mingled with the social elite that frequented William's circles, all united in a vigil for the lives of the two. The flames of the candles flickered against the darkness, creating a sea of light that could be seen from the hospital windows. Look, the same society that separated us by prejudice is now praying united for our family. Helena must be smiling in heaven, William murmured, watching the crowd from his wheelchair. Dr. Ethan entered the room with the latest test results, his face carrying the weight of yet another impossible decision. William listened intently as the doctor explained that the antidote was working for Emily, but that his own treatment was causing an overload on the hospital's only functioning generator. Charlotte, who had not left her sister's side, felt her heart tighten as she saw her father raise his hand, interrupting the explanation. "Turn off my machines, doctor. Use all the power to save my daughter. I've lived long enough to see my girls reunited, to know that I'll be a grandfather. Elena is waiting for me on the other side," William declared, his voice weak but determined. Virginia, who had remained silent in a corner of the room, let out a sharp sob upon hearing William's decision. Her hands trembled as she held a yellowed envelope she had kept for decades. Charlotte noticed the movement and approached the governess, her intuition telling her that more secrets were about to come to light. "There's something you all need to know before any final decision. Charlotte, I'm not just the obsessive governess who tore your family apart. I am your real mother," Virginia confessed, her voice breaking with the weight of the truth hidden for so long. The room plunged into a stunned silence. William closed his eyes, as if an old pain finally made sense. Charlotte staggered, leaning against the nearest wall, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. Virginia continued, the words now flowing like a dam finally breaking. "Elena was pregnant with Emily when she met William. I was already pregnant by him, but never had the courage to tell. When Elena found out she was expecting twins, I manipulated everything so they would think the two babies were hers. Emily is Elena's daughter. Charlotte is my daughter," Virginia revealed, decades of lies crumbling with each word. The crowd outside began to sing an ancient prayer, their voices rising like a wave of hope up to the hospital windows. Charlotte looked back and forth between Virginia and William, seeking confirmation or denial of this devastating truth in their faces. Dr. Ethan took the moment to check Emily's vital signs, noticing a sudden change in her brain patterns. Her fingers moved. "I think she's trying to wake up," he exclaimed, bringing everyone back to the present moment. William tried to rise from the wheelchair, his frail body protesting the movement. Virginia and Charlotte rushed to help him, their differences momentarily forgotten at the possibility of Emily waking up. The machines began registering more brain activity, and Emily's eyes began moving beneath her closed lids. "Emily, my daughter, your mother Elena told me in dreams that you would return to us. Fight, my love, fight as your mother fought," William pleaded, his strength visibly fading. Emily's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, but gradually finding the anxious faces around her. Her first words were only a whisper, but they carried the weight of all the truths revealed that night. "Mommy, she was with me. Said it wasn't my time yet, that our family needed to heal," she murmured, as Charlotte squeezed her hand tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. The moment of joy was brutally interrupted by the sound of William's heart monitors beginning to emit urgent alerts. The effort of getting up, combined with the emotion of the revelations, had been too much for his weakened heart. Dr. Ethan rushed to attend to him, but William made a weak gesture, refusing help. "No, leave it. Eleanor is waiting for me. My daughters are safe. The truth has finally come to light." His words came out stammered, his face growing paler. Emily, still weak but determined, tried to sit up in bed, reaching out a hand towards her father. Charlotte was paralyzed between the joy of seeing her sister awake and the terror of seeing her father rapidly deteriorating. Virginia had fallen to her knees, her prayers mingling with those of the crowd outside. "Father, don't leave us now. We need to understand everything. We need time to heal these wounds. Emily has only just come back to us," begged Charlotte, her voice choked with despair. Suddenly, William's monitors began emitting a continuous shrill sound as Emily finally managed to sit up, her wide eyes fixed on her father. Dr. Ethan moved between the two patients, torn between saving the father or stabilizing the newly awakened daughter. The crowd outside, as if sensing the drama unfolding inside the hospital, raised the volume of their prayers. their voices rising like a celestial choir into the Mexican night. Eleanor, Emily, Charlotte, Virginia, forgive me. These were William's last words before his eyes closed, as the heart monitor continued its funereal song. The first rays of the rising sun filtered through the hospital windows, painting the room with golden hues of hope. William's heart monitor, which seconds before had emitted a continuous deadly sound, suddenly sprang back to life with strong rhythmic beeps. Dr. Ethan watched in awe as the vital signs stabilized inexplicably, as if a higher power had intervened. Emily and Charlotte, still holding hands, witnessed what could only be described as a miracle. Eleanor always said that true love has the power to heal all wounds. Perhaps she was more right than we imagined, murmured William, his voice surprisingly clear as he opened his eyes, a serene smile on his face. 3 months later, the judge's office was filled with emotion as William signed the documents officially recognizing Emily as his daughter. Charlotte, her belly already showing the signs of pregnancy, silently wept beside her sister. The words on the document seemed to glow in the morning light. Emily Elena Carter, legitimate daughter of William Carter and Elena Gonzalez. The judge, moved by the family's story, made sure to add a special notation. Love has many ways of manifesting itself, Mr. Carter. Today we are not only correcting a past mistake, we are celebrating the triumph of truth over the lies that for so long separated this family, declared the magistrate as he solemnly stamped the documents. Virginia was sitting in a police interrogation room, her wrinkled hands resting on a pile of documents detailing 3 decades of manipulations and lies. Her face showed the weight of each confession, but also a strange relief at finally shedding the burden of secrets. I do not ask for forgiveness for myself, only the chance to try to repair some of the harm I have caused. Charlotte is my biological daughter, yes, but Eleanor was more of a mother to her in 9 months than I was, in 30 years of lies, she confessed. Her voice choked as she signed her full statement. The Carter mansion underwent a surprising transformation in the following months. The halls that once witnessed lavish parties now housed hospital beds. The garden, where Virginia used to obsessively watch over William, became a space of recovery and hope for homeless people. Emily personally supervised every detail of the renovation, using her experience on the streets to ensure the space was truly welcoming. This place will not only be a hospital, it will be a home for those forgotten by society. Every person who enters these gates will find not only medical care but also dignity and respect, she explained to the volunteers joining the project. William, whose health improved daily, walked the corridors of the new hospital with the aid of a cane, frequently stopping to talk with patients. The money Elena had saved in the Swiss account was used to equip the hospital with cutting-edge technology, ensuring that no one would ever have to choose between saving a life or another due to lack of resources. Eleanor always dreamed of transforming this mansion into a place of healing and love. Now we have finally realized her dream. Every life saved here is a tribute to her sacrifice, he would say, his eyes shining with tears of pride. Charlotte, now in her 8th month of pregnancy, coordinated the hospital's administrative area, ensuring resources were used efficiently and transparently. Her transformation from spoiled socialite to compassionate manager impressed everyone who had known her before. I'm going to call my daughter Elena, in honor of the woman who, though not my biological mother, taught me through Emily the true meaning of maternal love, she confided to William one tranquil afternoon in the garden. Virginia, after serving her reduced sentence for cooperating with justice, devoted herself to working in the hospital laundry, a symbolic gesture of humility and redemption. Her hands, which had once plotted so many separations, now busied themselves bringing comfort and cleanliness to those in need. Every sheet I wash, every piece of clothing I fold, is a small prayer for forgiveness. I do not deserve the title of mother, but perhaps one day I will deserve to be called a friend by those I have wronged, she would murmur as she worked tirelessly. Dr. Ethan accepted the invitation to be the medical director of the new hospital, bringing with him a dedicated team and the same commitment to life he had shown on that crucial night. Under his leadership, the Elena Carter Hospital quickly became a benchmark in humanized care for the vulnerable population. That night taught us that miracles happen, but we need to create the conditions for them to manifest, he would explain during team meetings. On an especially significant afternoon, the whole family gathered in the hospital garden for a double celebration: the birth of little Eleanor, Charlotte's daughter, and the inauguration of the hospital's pediatric wing. William, now a doting grandfather, held his granddaughter in his arms as he watched his daughters chatting animatedly about the institution's future plans. "Look, my love," he whispered, gazing up at the sky as if speaking to Elena. "Our family is finally complete. Love conquered hatred, truth overcame lies, and your sacrifice was not in vain." The Carter family's story became a legend in Houston, a living testament that true love has the power to transcend death, heal old wounds, and transform lives. The hospital continued to grow, saving more lives each day, a living memorial to Elena's love and Emily's courage. People said that on the quietest nights, when the moon bathed the gardens with its silvery light, it was possible to feel Elena's presence walking the corridors, her gentle spirit still caring for those most in need of love and protection. "Love is the only inheritance that truly matters," became the motto of the Elena Carter Hospital, written in golden letters above the main entrance, an eternal testament to the transformative power of true love. We are grateful for having shared with us this special moment. If this narrative touched your heart, become a part of our community of storytellers. Your engagement is essential for us to continue sharing captivating narratives daily. A new fascinating story is already being prepared especially for you. Your presence here means a lot to us. Browse through the links available at this moment on the screen and discover our carefully curated collection of enthralling stories. It will be a pleasure to meet you at our next narrative.